That is the inquiry that gnaws at my thoughts drift late at night when the house is the quiet enveloped us, punctuated only by my husband's rhythmic breathing, illuminates the shadowy room. Yet it was not, it has always been this way. There was a moment when my life was unremarkable, almost routine. A 42-year-old woman with a steady life, the union of two souls, a cozy sanctuary. And a stepson I believed I understood until that fateful day I truly saw him, really saw him, and it was a Thursday afternoon. The kind where the air is imbued with a gentle warmth burdened by unexpressed emotions. Her husband, Charles, had departed for a business trip. Journey that morning. Discarding a fleeting kiss as he made his exit as if he were brushing aside an annoying insect they hadn't shared a touch in months. This is certainly not how a partner should be treated. Moved. I was holding a basket of laundry upstairs, my mind dulled by as I settled into my routine. A low, muffled sound caught my attention. A soft groan emanated from behind John's door, drawing my attention to my stepson. 21 years old, with a physique defined by lean muscle and an insatiable restlessness. Vibrancy infused with a certain assurance that originated from youthful exuberance and the unwavering belief that the world had a debt to him that I ought to acknowledge. I continued to walk. Yet I did not open the door. Was slightly ajar, just enough to allow a sliver of light spilled into the dimness. As I walked down the hallway, my gaze fell upon him. John was there. Reclined on his bed, bare-chested, one hand clutching the headboard with one hand while the other glided gently between his legs with a deliberate slowness intentional. His body was tense, and his breath came in quick, shallow bursts. Arriving in brief, striking flashes, the vision of him so unrefined and so unrestrained sent a surge within me that I hadn't experienced in for years. I was aware that I ought to have walked away, yet my feet remained firmly planted in place. His fingers tightened, lifting his hips with a deliberate grace. Slightly off the mattress as he faltered, he was in the rhythm. A blush crept up. His chest, his abs tightening with each the motion. And then, dear heavens, he released a hushed curse escaped his lips as his head drooped. Resting against the soft pillow as his form, my throat tightened, dryness creeping in as my pulse quickened. Struck in areas I had long since overlooked, the moment everything changed, transformed, because, for the first time in years, I experienced a surge of vitality and yearned for even more. What I remind myself now, reflecting on the past, my existence remained familiar to me. In the days when I was simply Karen, the devoted, the dependable stepmother. The woman who maintained the house in immaculate condition, and the wine awaited her husband's return with a sense of calm anticipation, yet devotion begins to fade when it goes unnoticed. Is it still the same since I met Charles 7 years ago? At a charity gala, one of those formal lavish gatherings infused with the sparkle of champagne. Attended by the affluent men congratulate themselves for crafting narratives, ensures he appears striking in that refined salt and pepper hair in a corporate setting, tailored suits. A smile that lingers just out of reach met his gaze, a widower with a 21-year-old stepson, a young man in need of guidance. Someone to occupy the voids in his life had left me feeling quite solitary, and I found myself compelled to accept. Initially, it sufficed. The grand residence nestled in the suburban landscape of the countryside. Exclusive memberships as individuals, she softly expressed that she truly made a graceful arrival behind my back. Yet the reality was that Charles did not. He adored the notion of me, a love that transcended mere affection. A polished partner. A comforting presence beside him, a woman who preferred to keep her inquiries to a minimum, inquiries when he stayed late or arrived, the air infused with the lingering scent of another's fragrance. And John. Well, John was just a bit moody when I entered, with a furrowed brow and a slumped posture. Shoulders glaring at me as if I were an intruder, I endeavored, God knows I endeavored, preparing his meals for the day and cheering him on at his soccer matches, engages in a playful act of feigned ignorance as he forcefully shut his bedroom door. Yet it wasn't until he matured that he truly felt the connection, as if divinely orchestrated. Did he transform into the tall, slender boy I once knew? His jaw vanished. His voice took on a deeper, more resonant quality. An unsettling sensation coiling deep within me, the cadence of his voice and the intensity of his gaze. He would glance in my direction as if he sensed my presence. In a manner his father had not been for years, coursed a thrilling danger through my veins, yet I chose to overlook it until that afternoon. Until I found myself standing outside his door, my body thrumming with an emotion I hadn't experienced in for a decade. That night I found myself wide awake, thinking of Charles, as he snores softly beside me. My skin remains warm with lingering heat. Based on my observations, I revisited it in my notice how John's muscles tightened. The way his breath caught, the way my fingers moved effortlessly. Yet I found myself reluctant to pause. That filled me with dread because for the first there was a moment when desire intertwined with impossibility. And, even more troubling, I found myself beginning to believe I desired it as well. That's what I reassured myself. The morning following my encounter with John, I found myself repeating it feels like a sacred moment while scrubbing the folding laundry on the kitchen counter, while pouring a warm cup of tea creates a cozy atmosphere, blending the mundane with a touch of comfort. Coffee, a delightful companion to occupy my hands, and while my mind felt dulled, my body held on to the memories. With each gentle flutter of my eyelids, his image danced vividly in my mind. The sheen of sweat adorning his chest, the manner in which his fingers glided, unrefined and genuine, the delight etched on his face lingered in my mind, overwhelming my thoughts. He gazed at me 3 days later. Truly gazed upon me. It unfolded in the kitchen. Charles had disappeared once more. Business trip, though I had ceased years ago. I found myself believing that excuse. The house was enveloped in an unsettling silence, the air heavy with something electrifying. I was adorned in a sundress I hadn't worn in years. One that held on just a touch too tightly. I firmly reminded myself that I hadn't worn it. For him, I was nothing but a deceiver. John entered the room, shirtless, still glistening from the shower, the towel draped casually around his hips, droplets of water glistening on his skin, trickled down his chest, following the contours of his defined physique, traces of his abdomen before fading away underneath the delicate layers. My throat became parched. Grief, he spoke, his voice gravelly with I found myself unable to sleep. He spoke with a smirk as if he was fully aware of my thoughts, contemplating, and extended beyond me as we reached for the coffee pot. His arm gently brushed against mine. Merely a brush of connection, yet it ignited a jolt coursed through me, rendering my knees unsteady. I ought to have taken a step back, but I didn't. He gently poured his coffee intentionally, his gaze remained fixed on me. Then he took a sip, his lips curling in a subtle, inviting smile around the edge in a manner that captivated my, "Are you okay, Karen?" he asked, concern etching his features as he noticed her stomach clench. He tilted his head, observing the tension that lingered in your demeanor. He uttered my name as if it were a cherished secret, wrapped in intimacy and allure. Between us, it unraveled me. I revealed my words lingered on the tip of my tongue, yet silence enveloped me. Then, with a sense of urgency, I leaned in and moved just enough for him to sense that the tension between us was palpable. His breath caught in his throat. The grip on the mug grew firmer as suddenly the doorbell chimed, and we instinctively pulled away from each other, as if we had been scorched. It was the neighbor inquiring about something that has gone missing package, a routine disruption that should have brought me back to the present moment. However, it did not unfold as expected. For when I glanced back to John, his eyes were a deep, shadowy hue. Something untamed, something yearning, and I understood that this was far from finished. It had merely the journey has just started following those moments in the kitchen. The encounter elongated, reminiscent of sticky taffy. Slow and utterly captivating. Charles, he returned home, his suitcase barely in tow, collapsing to the ground before he concealed himself in correspondence during conference calls and all that surrounded me and John. While John observed, his gaze enveloped me, a tangible caress that stirred something deep within, tracing the delicate curve of my neck as I leaned down to retrieve a fallen napkin. Gently tracing the curve of my thighs as I crossed my legs onto the couch, remained silent as he refrained from discussing what nearly transpired. It occurred to him that he didn't need to breathe the air. The tension between us deepened with each moment. An hour later, on a rain-drenched Thursday, Charles departed once more for an urgent meeting. "Chicago," he remarked, already scrolling. As he pressed his lips to my cheek, his phone in hand back Sunday, the instant the tail lights his car glided away, vanishing down the driveway. The house sighed softly, and John emerged from its depths. At the threshold of the living room, he stood. Clad in comfortable sweatpants and nothing more, he exuded an effortless charm. Chest still shimmering from after the workout as the water cascaded down, a playful smirk danced across their lips. The edge of his lips as he leaning against the frame, arms crossed. "Standing alone at last," he uttered. My pulse thundered in my ears. I ought to have crafted an excuse. I truly should have. I confined myself to my room, as I ought to have done. Referred to a friend as a therapist and a priest instead, I savored a sip of wine and held his gaze lingered as he pushed away. He emerged from the doorframe and advanced toward me with purpose. With a subtle assurance of a hunter who could have imagined the couch sagged beneath his, the weight of his presence lingered as he sat beside me, close enough that I could detect the crisp, invigorating aroma. He often finds himself lost in thoughts about it as well. Whispered as his knee grazed against mine, "Please don't. You insist I'm mistaken," as his fingers gently traced. Gentle impressions left on the couch cushion inches from my thigh reveal to me that you haven't. I've been nestled in bed at night, lost in my thoughts and daydreams. What would it be like? The wine glass trembling? In my hand, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. Whispered softly against my ear, "I am aware that you possess," and then the garage door creaked open, revealing us. Separated just as Charles's voice resonated, I left my passport behind, and John's gaze was intense, imprinted upon me as his father's footsteps approached. He whispered then he had departed, leaving me with the legacy of the grandfather. The clock in the hallway ticked onward. At the stroke of midnight, I found myself lying rigid in bed. Every nerve in my body is crying out for Charles. The flight had departed several hours earlier, leaving the house behind. Remained quiet, interrupted only by the sound of wood settling in the creek, or was it something else? The footsteps sent a shiver across my skin. An exhilarating blend of longing and trepidation with a fierce determination. The doorknob turned. Moonlight poured through the crack as the door creaked open, unveiling John's, the outline of strong shoulders framed by tousled hair, the subtle shimmer of his gaze fixed upon. He remained silent. There was no need for words. The hunger emanating from him was undeniable. My breath caught in my throat as he approached. Inside, she gently closed the door behind her. Secure the lock to engage the mattress. Yielded beneath his presence as he advanced, he approached me with a slow, deliberate grace. The aroma of his cologne, rich and mysterious and tantalizing, nothing like Charles, enveloped around me. My fingers twisted in the sheets, tangled as she hesitated, yearning to pull him closer. "John," I whispered, my voice barely rising above a breath. We want his thumb to graze my lower lip. His hand glided down my neck, over the delicate lace of my nightgown, tracing the graceful contour of my hip wherever, he caressing my skin, igniting a fire within. My body arched in response, moved toward him as if guided by an unseen force, and then his lips met mine. The kiss was a gentle claim of desperation. The kind of kiss that transformed your very essence. His tongue tangled as his teeth grazed my lip. With mine, I gasped at him, my nails exploring the contours of his shoulders in a place where, amidst the haze, I became aware of the sound of the fabric of my nightgown tearing under his touch. I was indifferent to the state of his physique in those sweatpants, firm against me. All taut muscle, and an overwhelming urge compels me to continue, yet I await your gentle command to halt. He growled against my throat, and I found myself at a loss for words. Wanted, his hands. His mouth, the name lingered on my lips, everything fading into a singular. Transformative instant that alters everything, focused on the heaviness of him, the tension in the air as he whispered to Karen. It was both a plea and a lament, and then the car appeared. The door slammed shut outside, and we stood frozen, our hearts racing like the tires on a winding road. As Charles John's footsteps crunched on the gravel, a string of curses escaped his lips. Gliding away from me as the headlights illuminated through the bedroom curtains, panic clawed up my throat, I hissed, shoving through the tension that hung in the air. John dressed in his clothes, ready to face the day. Moments lingering as he gently traced his thumb over my kiss-swollen lips. This isn't. Then he was gone, slipping into the shadows, danced as the front door creaked open. I hurriedly made my way downstairs, scrambling to smooth the sheets to ease my exhaling, to erase the traces of deceit reflected in my expression. Yet nothing could erase what we had created together, and as Charles's footsteps ascended the stairs, revealing a singular truth, reverberated in my mind, urging me to relive those moments once more as the weeks unfolded. Following that night, everything became a haze of secret encounters, fleeting glances and electric touches. Charles was completely absorbed, lost in the depths of my work golf excursions without his spouse. In the meantime, John and I honed our skills in the subtle art of deception. A fleeting brush of fingers when the gentle exchange of salt, a kiss that lingers veiled as a farewell kiss when with Charles's back turned, we proceeded with caution. We were daring. We were destined for disaster. The first crack emerged on a serene Sunday morning. Charles shuffled through as I sat at the breakfast table. I found myself choking on the mail. While I was enjoying my orange juice, Charles unexpectedly. Karen frowned at the credit card statement. He inquired slowly, "Why is there a $300 charge? Charged from the Grand Hyatt last Tuesday." As it coursed through my veins, that was the afternoon John and I at John's Fork clattered onto his plate. "Oh, that was my doing." He offered his father a charming smile, effortlessly confident. The group at the hotel bar overlooked my Karen shielded Charles's eyes with the card. "You had a study group at a." John made the necessary adjustments to the luxury hotel networking event. "Effortlessly, you often express connections hold greater significance than grades." The truth should have come to light at that moment. Yet Charles merely grunted and carelessly tossed the. I set the bill aside and released the breath I had been holding. I have been reflecting on that night as I diligently scrubbed phantom marks on surfaces that are already spotless. Charles made his entrance into the kitchen, surrounded by the clatter of dishes. "You've seemed a bit preoccupied lately, haven't you?" The sponge eluded my grasp. Merely weary, he moved closer, the scent of his cologne enveloping the air around them. The same uninspired, costly fragrance I had come to dislike occupying my area. "Perhaps we ought to escape together. Just the two of us." His hand rested on my hip as it once did. Reminiscent of our past, the first time he had laid his hands on me in months, all that occupied my mind were the sensations of John's hands. I managed to muster a smile that felt somewhat strained. It was pleasant when he kissed me, though it felt rather dry and mechanical. The gentle touch of his lips as he withdrew his gaze fell to my neck, drawn to the faint. "John departed last night. You ought to exercise greater caution with your jewelry," he suggested. Whispered. The embrace left an impression. The deception hung between us, dense and stifling. Days later, I returned to find the house devoid of life, and a note on the fridge that reads, "Gone fishing. Dad will be back on Sunday." The breath escaped my lungs in a sudden rush. Charles had not brought up a fishing trip. My fingers quivered as I dialed John's number. The call went directly to voicemail. The landline rang, signaling Mrs. Whitaker's presence. Concise and polished, "This is Nurse Simmons at St. Luke's. Your beloved spouse was admitted with chest pains." The remainder merged in a moment of exhaustion. "At the workplace, stable now. Seeking your presence." In the hospital, my thoughts were a whirlwind, consumed by Charles's presence. The private suite enveloped me in an unsettling silence as he lay propped up on pillows, entering a world of dreams and desires. For slipping from his arm, his face pale, John stood at the foot of the bed, a figure of quiet intensity, his gaze lingering on the scene before him. Our gazes locked for just a fleeting moment, yet it was ample time to witness the weight of guilt, the grip of fear, the lingering heat that remains whispered softly beneath it all. Charles's voice cut through the stillness. The doctor indicates it's due to stress. His gaze fixed intently pictured John as he clears his throat. I'll grant you some privacy then. The door clicked shut behind him. Charles hesitated for a moment before reaching into his. As I opened the bedside drawer, a wave of unease washed over me. He casually flung a collection of photographs onto the texture was coarse yet undeniably John, and in the hotel lobby, John's hand rested on mine. John's thigh pressed against me in the parked car. Leaning against our own front door, I made the decision to hire last month. Charles spoke with a calm demeanor. Following the incident with the credit card, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Charles closed in around me, and I saved it. Leaned back suddenly, surveying every one of his 53 in the coming years. This is what you can expect to unfold. Tonight, you will gather your belongings, depart, and should you ever reach out to my stepson once more, these photos are shared with every news outlet. The ultimatum should be addressed in the city outlet. Have broken me, yet all I experienced was relief washed over me until I arrived home, where I discovered John's note was affixed to my suitcase. Simply read, meet me in room 712 at the Hyatt. We shall unravel this together. I remained there for a full minute, the paper crumples in my fist, and then I extended my hand toward the keys, compelled by the presence of certain toxins. Regardless of the peril, the allure remains irresistible. Karen's journey concludes at a pivotal moment. Started at a hotel with an option, yet the repercussions will be lasting. The fallout. John's divorce scandal, eventual resentment will linger in her heart. In this moment, she embraces her longing over the dignified ascent to the 7th floor. The floor of the Grand Hyatt exuded an air of elegance and sophistication. Ascending to my own demise, the reflection in the mirrored walls revealed a woman I hardly recognized, her features blurred with trembling fingers. The mascara wand hovered near her lips, poised in a moment of stillness. Swollen from John's last kiss, the sound lingered. The moment of arrival sent a wave of unease through my stomach. The door to room 712 was slightly ajar. Gently pushed it open to reveal John's silhouette. Against the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows, the glow of urban brilliance illuminating his exposed skin, streaks of gold and shadow. A half-empty bottle of bourbon rested elegantly on the nightstand, next to my cherished fragrance, the one I secretly tucked away in my lingerie drawer. He said, "You came without planning this." As I turned around, my voice resonated in the open air, reaching out to you. I realized I would. That was the moment I laid eyes on them. 2 duffel bags are positioned by the closet. John's gaze deepened, taking on a shade darker than I had never seen them. They are departing tonight. Father is set to freeze the accounts at the stroke of midnight. However, I have sufficient funds to take us to Mexico. The truth of it struck me like a no more house, no more country club. Lunches are a thing of the past. It's time to embrace the hard work and dedication. Moist evenings in budget lodgings, racing from a scandal that would haunt us for eternity. I ought to have been filled with dread. What caused my heart to race with anticipation? Teetering on the edge of hope, John closed the space that separates us as roughened. His hands frame my face, urging me to say yes, Karen. My thumb gently traced the hollow beneath my eye. The kiss that ensued was infused with the rich essence of bourbon. And poor choices, I succumbed to John's hold on my waist grew firmer. The persistent knocking escalated. Intensely pursuing Mr. Whitaker at the front desk, John stormed to the door. Swearing under my breath as I went, I quickly adjusted my dress as he opened it. Is merely sufficient to gaze through. The clerk's voice trembled. "Your father is downstairs with the authorities, sir. They are requesting access to as the security cameras captured the moment. Time seemed to freeze as John slammed his fist down, the tension palpable in the air. He opened the door and turned to me. His chest, the stairs were steep and demanding, yet I remained still. Because suddenly I perceived everything in a new light. Whispers in the shadows. My sister's tearful moments at PDA meetings are truly poignant. Could you and John help recover the 21-year-olds? Always do, but as a woman nearing 40, I find myself reflecting on. With a swift motion, John seized my arm, pulling me closer as the tension between us crackled in the air. Pulled apart. This was never about our connection, the words lingered on the tongue like ash. This was about you are causing pain to your father's jaw. You've tightened your grip, but I assure you, I truly did mean it. The realization struck me with a harsh intensity. Clarity, I had become a mere pawn in their intricate game. The conflict between father and son. And I had stepped right into it in the distance. The haunting sound of sirens echoed, a wailing lament that filled the air. I reached for the room phone, captivated by John's eyes. What are you doing calling me now that you've gone wide? Charles, I said, my voice eerily calm. It's... For the first time, John looked, filled with trepidation. The final image that lingered before the police arrived, and his face was strikingly beautiful. Enraged and at last recognizing me as an alternative to forbidden fruit, a cautionary tale about a woman who made a choice. Herself too late with the divorce papers on a Tuesday, Charles arrived. Keeping to the residence, the vehicles, the admiration of his colleagues, I secured a charming studio apartment and a Google device. Notification that continues to resonate whenever John's name emerges from fraternity gatherings with a DUI capture a TikTok video of him laughing. With a certain blonde sorority member on occasion in the stillness of the night, I wander through the corridors of the hotel. I took a card from room 712, and it leaves me pondering. If he ever thinks of me, then I am overwhelmed with emotion. Another drink, and I attempt to erase the memories that linger. Karen's life unraveled in the wake of the scandal, like a worn tapestry. Each thread delicately unraveled, strand uncovering the harsh reality hidden below the intricately crafted facade of her past and her fortunate life. She rose each the morning light gently filters into a cozy, dimly lit studio apartment that was permeated with the scent of old coffee and lingering regret, a solitary window gazing out onto a grimy alleyway where dumpsters brimmed with the traces of the lives once lived. Distant yet palpable call from the sunlit master bedroom of the residence she once shared with her spouse relax in luxurious silk pajamas. Anticipating the housekeeper to deliver her breakfast, and the bed has now been replaced by a chipped mug of the hot brew, seared her tongue as she perused the job listings on her shattered phone screen. Her formerly polished nails now chewed down to the quick, the longing to pawn a diamond wedding band to settle some debts. The initial month's rent on this disappointing an explanation for a residence where the shower never became rather warm. And the neighbors argued passionately in tongues she was unfamiliar with, comprehend the hours she dedicates to managing calls at dental office where Dr. Rosen practices roaming fingers, and the scent of aged breath created her skin crawled. Yet the $17 hourly wage maintained the ambience with soft lighting and affordable wine flowing in a manner reminiscent of something that arrived in cardboard containers and left her with migraines. The tea throbbed at the back of her mind like a haunting memory of Charles's repulsed expression when he had tossed her suitcase onto the front porch steps of their grand estate while the neighbors feigned indifference, their eyes subtly drawn to the unfolding scene. From behind their curtains, her nights unfolded. An ever-changing selection of frozen meals enjoyed directly from the container. As she darkly navigated through John's social in the media, he was spotted on a luxurious yacht in Miami. His arms were wrapped around a sun-kissed co-ed, whose laughter had yet to leave its mark amidst the weight of shame and regret. There he stood, committing to a brotherhood alongside the father's wealth in light of the controversy that should have brought him to his knees as well, yet somehow only shattered her, and there he was, existing in the life she had naively envisioned they could share. Reveal moments when she had been intoxicated by desire and desperation in those clandestine hotel rooms, afternoons where the linens carried a fragrant essence, the champagne from the mini bar danced on his palate like freedom. Now merely a specter shadowing her sorrowful solitude, accompanied by a pile of overdue invoices collecting dust upon her kitchen counter and the notice of eviction affixed to her the door she feigned ignorance of when she returned home from yet another exhausting day. An ordinary day at work where the others, the receptionists, exchanged hushed whispers about her when they believed she was oblivious to their sympathetic gazes that pierced like blades what lingered of her dignity. Her once lustrous hair now appears dull and brittle from anxiety and low-quality shampoo. Her stylist closet transformed by second-hand treasures. Itchy stretched sweaters. The seams of her social circle unraveled. Like the morning mist when the scandal unfolds, left with nothing but her elderly neighbor Mrs. Petrovich, who occasionally visited Bourse and had limited proficiency in English to pose challenging inquiries to the uncommon evenings spent in melancholic local taverns where younger men eagerly offered to be you. Why her drinks and anticipated narratives featuring the mother-in-law who kissed her stepson as if she were some living embodiment of folklore rather than an ordinary person. The moments when she would occasionally catch her, the image mirrored in the smudged diner window where she savored a solitary grilled cheese sandwiches and hardly acknowledged the woman with hollow eyes gazing back at her. The crow's feet deepen with each passing moment. The fleeting month of this limbo, the existence of the weight she had lost, creating a profound transformation. Her garments drape loosely, resembling sacks. Yet there is more to them than meets the eye. No one was present to observe or show concern for the voicemails from her sister that had gone left unspoken, as she found it too painful to detect the sorrow woven into her words. Once more, the manner in which rainy afternoons enveloped her, the ache of nostalgia lingers. A reminder of that first serendipitous meeting beyond John's door, the door when her life was still filled with potential and her skin still tingled with a thrilling sense of anticipation. Rather than lamenting the manner in which she still at times, she indulged in her own desires under the cover of night. Envisioning his hands exploring her form prior, the overwhelming tide of embarrassment would wash over me and leave her weeping into a pillow that carried the unmistakable scent of dampness and neglect. Ed trusses the tremor in her hands as she poured her morning coffee from the percolator, which was the most delightful item she possessed now. In the manner she had begun to smoke once more after a decade and a half due to the nicotine muted the craving for something deeper. More that continued to resonate within her like a rabbit. She would lie awake, the distant wail of sirens echoed outside her. I gaze out the window, pondering whether this is all there truly is. Could ever exist in this infinite expanse of solitary days and even more desolate nights in life, distilled into a cautionary narrative strolling through a tribute to the sacrifices women endure for siring too much from the wrong individuals. Will always be able to find her name online. The stepmother in online discussions and Reddit discussions where unfamiliar voices analyzed her downfall unfolded with a chilling sense of detachment. My whole being has become a mere annotation in the narrative of another as she floated away, drifting through the days as if a specter in her own existence, filled with anticipation for something though. T would never arrive, with a desire for something she could never again. Will she become someone else? Was never intended to be.